All right. Good morning, everyone. 10 a.m. Seals the deal is all. Hello, hello, hello. So we are streaming on YouTube, Facebook, LinkedIn, and Twitter. So we will be starting very, very soon. So I'll just give everyone 2 more minutes to get coffee, to get comfortable, put away whatever you guys are doing right now, and let's have fun. If you're on YouTube, there is a chat box there. So if anyone can also say hi, engaged, and just let me know how many people and where you are from listening to this right now. Yeah. So for those who are here for the first time, my name is Michael. I am the co-founder of Belkins, and I will be doing the hosting today for you. And I have incredible colleagues, friends, and people and professionals that are going to be joining me today for this event. There will be a recording of this as well that we will share. So basically, before I will get my people here and who will join me, my speakers, my guest, a few things about the format for today. So it's not going to be a keynote presentation, and it's not going to be a roundtable. It's going to be a mix. So I will bring on all our guests, all our speakers, and then we're going to have 3 keynotes. But we'll still stay here with you, and we'll be discussing the keynote, and we also going to be asking and answering questions with the chat with each other. So it's going to be an interactive format where still there will be a speaker, but we will be basically contributing and hanging out and engaging. So it's going to be a lot of fun here. So I encourage everyone to be active because these people that I brought on to this event today, they have a lot of things to share. And I would love if you can kind of dig deeper and then ask all these questions. So, all right. So I will just share this thing here. You should see it. Perfect. All right. So I'm bringing on my speakers today. All right. So, all right. We have Tom. Hey, Tom. Good morning.
Hello,
Hi.
hello. Here we
How
are.
are you?
So good.
So good. Awesome. All right. We have Rosie here. Hi, Rosie.
Hi, good morning.
Good morning. And Alex. Hey, Alex.
Hi, everyone.
Hi. All right. So, hello, everyone in the chat. So, again, we're starting now. We're going to have 1 hour of keynotes and discussions and questions and information, and then about 20 minutes of Q&A. But if we're going to see some cool questions in the chat while we are doing the keynote, we are happy to answer those as well. All right. So basically, let's get started. I think like everyone already wants to get to the to the thing. All right. So the reason why we've selected this specific topic was the fact that we hear from all the channels that sales teams have been struggling with closing, have been struggling with completing their quotas, the pipeline dried out, and so on and so forth. And knowing how great the Chili Piper sales team, how great Reply is with their sales, we wanted with Rode to collaborate and bring all of these great people together to exactly learn from them and share with you guys about what everyone is doing right now with the different ICPs, with the different segments, with the different buyers, and what are the best practices, what's happening, what are the benchmarks, and what can we do to be better, all of us, to kind of, and that will be the way of kind of our collaborative growth, right? So that's the topic. So let's get started. So basically, just to give again the agenda, I already did the intro. Next will be Rosie, then Alex, then Tom, and then we're going to be answering the questions. So please be active in the chat. And then, and then we're going to have a QA at the end, some kind of a roundtable, right? Before I don't forget, I also going to put this QR here. So please scan the QR code. It will help you to then get all the decks, all the information that we're going to have here to your mailbox. Then you don't need to go and pause the video all the time that you want to listen to something. All right. So I will be putting on this QR code. So yeah, perfect. All right. Rodi, so your mic, your stage. Hi.
All
Tell us what.
right. Hi.
Hi.
Hello. I'm so excited to be here this morning. Hi, everyone. My name is Rosie Partman. I'm the head of sales at Belkins. I'm so excited to be able to share some tips and tricks with you today. And also just want to say thank you for showing up. I know we have some amazing prospects on the line, maybe some clients we have on the line. So hi, everyone. If you're here and I've spoke to you, please message in here so I can give you a shout out. I know we were expecting Tanya. Hi, Tanya, if you're there. And also Nick. Hi, if you're there, Nick. All right, let's go ahead and get started. All right. So
Yeah.
just on obvious things. Sorry, Michael, did you want to jump
No, I
in?
would just say explain why it's unobvious, why you choose specifically this topic, Rosie.
Yeah. We can do the mundane every single day sales, but we have to think about those little outliers that separate what we're doing from what everyone else is doing. If you're in sales, I'm sure you have felt that things are a little bit different. The climate's different, and things are progressing a little bit differently in 2024 than they have previously. So, this is an amazing time to go in and see where you can make changes and find those little things that other people aren't doing and really hone in on your skills and just genuinely be there to support your prospects going through their pipeline. So, a few things we're going to talk about today. Deal closing. What is the industry average? What are benchmarks right now? What are people feeling and how we can combat that? Two, why lead qualification matters so much. It is such an important aspect of your whole sales pipeline. And number three, qualification process from A to Z. What does yours look like? I'll help you understand what ours looks like and why it helps us and why we have spent so much time perfecting it and it's never done. And then number four, how our sales team uses the pre-closure info during that closing process. There's just so many aspects involved. Okay, so let's talk about deal closing in numbers. Right now, more than 40%, and these are all amazing stats from the leading platforms out there that we're using, that I'm sure you're using. So this is very interesting information. 40% of all salespeople say that prospecting is the most challenging aspect of sales. And 9 times out of 10, I'm hearing this. It's the hunt. The hunt is so challenging. Multiple reasons. And so I'll go into that a little bit. With 36% of people saying that the closing is the hardest part and 22% saying that qualifying is, we're also seeing that 50% of sales people's time is wasted on unqualified deals or leads. So the reason it's so important to qualify a deal is from the very beginning, you can understand if you're talking to an A, B, or C player. You want to be sure that you're speaking to someone who is really interested in solving their problem and that your solution is really going to be the best option for them. And secondly, they are in this phase where they have the budget to actually make a change. So budget is extremely important when you're speaking to someone. And last but not least, are you speaking to the right person? Is this the person that can really be your champion? And I was just talking to my sales team yesterday and explaining that just because we're talking to a lower title that may not be the person who's signing that contract once you close the deal, they are going to be your biggest champion a lot of the times. And so when you're really able to help them with their job, they're going to be at bat for you when they're talking to their boss or their CEO looking to get that budget approved. So don't discount someone that you might not think is going to be your champion, because they will help you push that through the pipeline.
Tom, Alex, Salesforce here reported that their lead to close length is like 100 days. It's on average when we're looking at the SMB, so 3 months. Tom, did you see at Chili Pipers the closing cycle increased in 2024 or decreased, or it stayed the same where you guys are?
It's a really good question. So we're super fortunate to have a short sales cycle on our team. So right now we hover around 35 days. We're talking specifically about mid-market and enterprise here. And that's probably closer to double that amount at closer to 2 months. But in short, yes, we saw our sales cycles expand by like 20% since
20%.
when I joined the company 2 years ago. And right now, as people have put a lot more rigor within their evaluations.
Alex, what about you guys?
Because we're mostly going after SMB and sometimes even the lower end of SMBs. We're also at the shorter sales cycle. We are at the average of 30 days, and those were our 2023 results. But we haven't seen much of the increase, but also because we went down market a bit. That's why it's stayed the same for us, but we changed the audience a little bit.
Last year, Belkins had something like 45 days average sales cycle. Now we are at like between 54 to 60 days and going up. And, and obviously it also means that salespeople need to do double work. So it means the nurturing, more follow-ups, more creative work, more touches, more and more, right? Because the longer sales cycle doesn't mean that you can fit in the same cadence of the touches that you're usually doing, just stretch it in a longer period of time. It just means that you need to do extra work, right? Rosie, should I kind of just move to the next slide here?
Yeah, sure. One quick thing I wanted to mention about the sales cycle also is it changes throughout the year from my experience, because at the end of the year, you're bringing those deals down that were not ready and maybe they have the budget. So at the end of your year, don't worry if your sales cycle gets a little bit longer. This happens time and time again. As soon as January starts up again, it'll go back to normal. So I've definitely seen that. Okay, let's talk about qualification. This is something that sales and marketing is constantly talking about. And the sales and marketing alignment, as we all know, is so important because marketing feeds sales and sales feeds marketing. So it is so important that we're speaking the same language here, and we're talking about the qualification metrics. So we have gone through rigorous meetings, hours of meetings, talking about the most important things that we're looking at to qualify a prospect. We're looking at the location. We're looking at the revenue that the company's bringing in. We're looking at the employees, the number of employees that they have. We're looking at just so many different variables. We have 10 questions that our BDR team will go through in order to ensure that a prospect is qualified before it goes to the sales executive. So just so we're all on the same page, we have some here at Belkins, an automated process, which helps us so much to get these prospects into our sales pipeline. And Michael, am I jumping the gun? Because I know have...
Yeah, of course.
I know we have... okay, amazing. So I didn't mean to jump, but this is my favorite part, because this is why a sales team can be so productive and why a sales team can take efficiently up to 50 new sales calls every single month. I mean, this is a lot of new sales calls, especially for a sales cycle that is, like Michael said, 45 to 60 days. So first, we have this automated round robin assignment. This is for all the inbound leads. And when a lead comes through, we are round robin assigned to a sales executive. Okay, now there is a certain finite amount of hours where we now have the business development representative team. This is an entirely separate team. They're looking at 10 different pieces of information manually to ensure that a prospect that's on the sales team's calendar is now qualified to be on that first call. We're not only looking at metrics, we're looking at how far in the sales cycle is this prospect. Do they have intent that when they do speak to the sales executive, because we know how precious everyone's time is, that it's going to make sense. It's going to be an effective conversation for both sides. So once we have this process down, we know that the prospect is ready to speak to a sales executive. Then we have the BDR sending some nurturing material. This is extremely important. The pre-sales nurture process, it further advances where the prospect is. It helps the prospect understand more about the solution that they're going to be talking about. And it also helps with the credibility for the team that they're going to be talking to. So our team will send an email with clutch links, G2 links, and case studies, testimonials. This is an amazing way to warm that prospect up even more. I have a mentor, Brian, shout out if you're watching, and he always talks to me about how important it is that we are nurturing the prospect before we even speak to the prospect. Because once it does come into your pipeline and you've spoke to the prospect, that process is so much smoother and it is faster and it's just stronger because that prospect is educated. And Tom and Alex, do you have anything you'd like to share with that? How is your pre-sales process?
You're speaking my language here, Rosie. I'd love to know who you used for that round robin. I think what I see most often when we talk to people who are starting at zero is they'll get 100 qualified people fill out their forms. And if they don't automate this process, they get, like, if they're doing really, really well, they'll get on a call with 50 of those people. So there's 50 people that showed intent and like inbounded on their site somewhere, and they're letting all of that slip through the cracks. And like without automation, especially like in today's day and age where prospects expect to be able to book a meeting right away, you're leaving, this isn't like long tail revenue. You're leaving huge chunks of revenue on the table. Like my team gets super excited. The nature of the product we sell accomplishes this for people. We get super excited when people are starting at zero, because I think a lot of times people think, we have a 50% growth goal this year. We need to produce 50% more leads. And we can go to those same people and often say like, no, you'll need nominally more leads. You just need to have a stickier fly trap to get those leads in. And the prospect also benefits. They don't want to come to your site, fill out a form, and then be chased for a couple of days or even have to go through like a manual qualification. They want to have that time reserved, make sure it's checked off their list that the software they're evaluating, they have time set aside to take a look at it. So I think it's relatively symbiotic. It's going to help you, of course, but also you're going to meet your prospects' expectations a lot better.
We've when we implemented the book a call link on the website, so prospect can directly get access to our sales team calendar, our conversion went through the roof, like 50%. So we received 50% more meetings. So less forms filled, more meetings. But the problem, as you just Tom pointed out, 100 prospects booked a call with our sales team, not being properly qualified, nurtured, even routed, right? So the next step what was for us, obviously, implementing Chili Piper. So now we have the routing. So we say, like, okay, so depending on who the clients are, they can be routed to the best person they can talk to based on their industry, based on their, on the size of the business they're in, or so on and so forth. Or even if, for example, like based on some simple pre-qualification that Rody mentioned, that the BDRs are doing sometimes automated, sometimes manually, we need to, before booking call, we need to reach out to them to clarify something else, right? So when we say it's disqualified here, it doesn't mean that, we're not going to be talking to that prospect. It just means that this specific client won't have access to our sales team calendar because based on the process we define, they won't either ready to talk to the team or spend their time. So essentially are saving times for both teams to be able to kind of, to have the better, buying journey. So this entire process is built through Chili Piper and HubSpot through the integration, and then it really kind of helps us to free up the calendar of our sales team, right? But also to provide clients with more relevant support and more relevant sales process. So
I'm blushing. That was wonderful. I didn't know we'd cover that today.
Yeah. All right, Rosie, what are we looking at here? I know this. What is that? But tell us what is that for the people?
Yeah, so you guys, this is the playbook that we use to identify the match between the prospect and the SE team, if they're ready. And so I'm sorry, I said 10, we added another one. Like I said, it is always changing because the climate's always changing. We're figuring out what makes a prospect really ready. And so we're taking, and you mentioned something, Michael, we're always looking at the quality and the quantity. So every single week with my sales team, we will talk about how's the quality rated on a 1 to 10, how's the quantity rated on a 1 to 10. We take this feedback, we go to the marketing department and we say, hey guys, this is what we're feeling, this is what's going on. And of course, we have to stay accountable. If we say that a lead is unqualified, we have to say why it's unqualified as a sales team, because it's so important, that feedback loop with anyone, to be able to improve the process. So we're putting detailed notes inside of HubSpot why the prospect was not qualified so that the marketing team can make adjustments. And we look at these trends over time. And that's why we add that number 11. So we're looking at a few different things, and you guys can read this. What is the original lead channel? Where's the location? Who is on their call? Is it what level? Did they ask questions about Belkins? And so another amazing aspect that we're able to do for ourselves in-house and our clients is we have all of the conversation between the prospect and the BDR recorded. So we're able to see, now as an SE, I'm able to see exactly the correspondence that the prospect had with the BDR so that I'm prepared and ready for the call. If they ask any specific questions, I can prepare for those as well. Michael, you wanted to add something
real quick here. The number 7 is really cool one. Not many companies do this. Like, do we have any proven track record within their industry? So what's happening is this helps us to keep the business development team accountable for the quality of the potential success of their engagement with that client. So what can happen is that, let's say you are running paid ads, you're driving all this business, and they might be, okay, it's an inbound channel, you have decision maker, they have the right size, but maybe they're not from the proven industry. So you will set up your sales team for failure because essentially you're looking to the clients that you don't have either experience in that industry or that you don't can have success to delivering to. So what we're trying to do is with this +1, -1, and with this scoring, we're able to ensure that our sales team can talk to the clients that have the higher potential, not just to closing, but also for us to then successfully delivering them our services and creating success for them, right? Because at the end of the day, it doesn't make sense to, or it's not make sense for any business. Like, again, talking from the business owner standpoint, it's like closing the customer that you can be successful with, because then it basically, it's like it's a death threat for everyone, right? And then clients are not happy, you're unhappy, anyone is unhappy, and then sales team is not feeling empowered because because the closed deal that they have, they didn't generate value for them. So yeah. Tom, Alex, maybe you can be talking about this as well, but do you guys have any playbooks or any qualification questions that you guys are using that are different from this one that your pre-sales team is using for booking or not? Alex, maybe you wanted to start if you have anything of that sort.
Yes. I also wanted to kind of second Rosie on the kind of proper lead routing, lead sorting, pre-qualification of the prospects, how important that is. We also heavily rely that when it comes to our inbound flows, because we do have like a portion of leads that are kind of more routed towards self-service, but we also run kind of our own data enrichment to score the leads properly. We use like a 5-tier system, and then we try to, like, our SDR then properly chases the tiers 1 and 2, the highest tiers, so that those ones are booked in the calendars of the sales team primarily. And I think maybe even our system might be a bit simpler because we do things like industry, company size, location. Of course, we also look at the persona who booked the call, just like a combination of those ones. Yeah.
Got it. Tom, what about you?
Much like Alex, we bring a lot of this upstream. So what we do is we run data in the background to score leads based on their industry for us, like whether they have a book a demo or a pricing CTA on their site that we could fit into very, very well. And then we run what I'll call an algorithm, so you all think I'm smart. Then we run an algorithm to actually score that lead and then serve those records to the SDRs. So by the time an SDR has a record, I would say 90% of the time, if they get a meeting book, that's going to be a qualified account. Now, the criteria we have for our SDRs is simply, do they have this many salespeople? Do they get this many leads? Either of those things, those folks can be relevant for Chili Piper. So obviously you make qualification criteria to steer SDR behavior, right? The worst thing you can do is have SDRs go outbound an account, spend their time, get close to booking a meeting and find out it's disqualified. So we've brought all the qualification into the lead scoring so that our SDRs don't waste time on the wrong leads.
Wow. Got it, Tom. All right, Rosie, 1 minute. Just let's talk people about some tips or some recommendation that you have for them. And then people can ask questions during the QA session if they have any.
Yeah, just tips. I would say this is something that I haven't talked about but the morale within your sales team is so important in order for them to be successful and have that 10% plus closing. And in order to have the morale high, you have to make sure that your sales team has the support. And so that's what this is all about. It's all about from the top down to close. How can we support the sales team in getting those only qualified leads that are ready to speak, that are, going to be the best use of your time? And that's how you keep everyone feeling good and happy and motivated and continuing to see that success. So just wanted to add that lovely morale aspect of it all to tie it in.
Tom, your sales team, do you have an example of like if anyone lost the morale or the team were down and it affected the closing rate? Does it affect like you guys as it affects us? Because that's something that, we are always been making sure that the sales team is happy. You guys have the same approach or not?
Gosh, I think the best thing we do is that, and I think most organizations do this, but when a meeting gets booked by an SDR, that's populated in Slack for the whole company to celebrate. When a deal gets closed by an AE, that populates in Slack for the whole company to celebrate. And the things that bring a smile to my face are when those AE deals are closed, we also pull the SDR owner into that. So to be able to when I talk to my SDR team and SDR leaders, I try not to talk to them about what we call QHMs, what many call SQ. I try to talk about that. I try to talk about the revenue they generate and bring them down funnel for the impact of their role. Because I think that's where, when an SDR cannot just see the 10 QHMs that got them to goal or the 10 SQLs that got them to goal, but they can see the revenue that the company is recognizing because of their work. I think that's the best way to address morale. And frankly, let an SDR feel the weight of their work. Because it can be a thankless role and can feel inconsequential if you focus too much on just the inputs.
Yeah, so true.
100%.
All right. Thank you so much, Rosie. All right, let's bring on Alex slide here. Alex, your stage, 20 minutes. We will be asking questions and I'll be interrupting you. I'm sorry. That's just my thing,
I really don't mind that, Michael. Also, if there are any questions in the chat, because I'm not sure I'll have the time to look down. So interrupt me at any point if you want to add anything. So once again, hello, everyone. I'm very excited to be here. Thanks, Belkins team, for the invite. I'm really honored to be here with Rosie and Tom and Michael and talk sales. And first, a quick intro. I'll try not to take that much time with that. So yeah, I've been leading a sales function at Reply for about 2 years, and overall I've been at the company for almost 4. And so I started, I think, right after COVID, and I think almost a year after I started at Reply, something fun that I did, and maybe out of the box that I did at 30 years, I went back to school. So for the past 3 years, I've been doing sales at Reply, doing discovery calls, or also kind of mentoring the team while also learning psychology, and sometimes doing things like what is the interview like and how do you do discovery, both looking for kind of a clinical problem or an organizational problem, which is right now something that I'm trying to specialize in, versus a problem during the demo or trying to uncover the pain. So it's been kind of very interesting experience to balance both. And yeah, a couple words at Reply, because why it's relevant, because everything that I'm going to talk about is based on what we've done at Reply in the past year and a half. All of these takeaways come from our sales experiences, and kind of why I'm talking specifically about SMB is because Reply is a sales engagement platform for SMBs, is a leader in the SMB space. We've been in that space for a while, for almost 10 years now. And yeah, some of the lessons that I'll share today are something that we've kind of seen where, because we've been mostly in the SMB for a while, and then I think almost 2 years ago, we tried going up market, because at that time, the product was a bit more aligned with that, the price, and so all of the sales were a little bit more aligned with that. But as we did a shift back to SMB, end of last year, we really had to do a lot of readjustments. And so kind of based on that experience, some of the takeaways I'm going to talk about, they're related to that. Yeah, so exactly, we'll talk about the SMB, what to avoid. In the end, I'll talk about what to do and what not to do. In terms of the structure, first I wanted us to kind of once again maybe pause with the whole, okay, how do we sell? What do we do as salespeople? But rather, who are our buyers? what do they expect, what do they value, and then how we can then adjust our sales processes to better fit what they're looking for. Next, we'll talk about the disco demo, how those maybe need to be adjusted a bit, and how those mostly affect then the sales processes, as well as everything that happens after the demo. And yeah, first I wanted to look at who are the SMB clients, right? What is important for them? And kind of what we've seen, that if we really want to win in that SMB space, if we want to be the number one solution, that first of all, we need to create the environment for these kinds of users, the environment where they can easily get familiar with the platform, where they can easily enter your platform. And that means that it is important to have a self-service option along with the option that would route your leads towards your sales team. And as kind of Rosie mentioned, as we mentioned already, the right kind of processes behind the scenes are the ones that guide that process. But having that easy entry option and self-service option is still kind of a deciding factor when you're targeted for the SMB space. And along with that, of course, that would have to do with your pricing strategy. How transparent is your price and how available it is? What kind of payment terms do you kind of require from your prospects? Because for a while we did, for the sales team, of course, right, we have our quotas, we have our targets, we want to bring in as much as revenue as possible. But then what is the right approach then when we're talking about SMBs? And of course, we can talk about lower end of SMB, higher end of SMBs, and there are different solutions and different market conditions. But kind of what we've seen based on our experiences and kind of offering more of a flexible options to our buyers is something that they really appreciate, and that actually makes them feel more empowered and in charge of their own decision making when they come to look at the software. And then because we're offering them kind of this ability to dig into the platform, maybe not necessarily going through sales at the first step, it's also important to ensure that we can support them, that we have proper support. Like, for example, in Reply, we always rely on live support via chat. And then if we have any inquiries that are sales related, like for example, on the website, some of the chats are going to go directly to SDRs, which then they'll pick up and also answer these questions, also qualify the leads, and then route them to sales and kind of book these meetings right away. Or if it's just kind of a technical question, then we have support who is able to handle that. But we make the product kind of readily available to them so that they can look at it. Yeah,
I must ask you, Tom, you guys are heavily present in SMB sales. Anything to add here to what just Alex mentioned?
I was damn near fist pumping when I heard Alex talk about transparent pricing in SMB. I think if you're selling an SMB and you have your pricing behind lock and key, you're leaving tremendous amounts of money on the table. Like the best indication, I think, is you look at HubSpot, which is increasingly cornered the SMB market. You can go and see their pricing on a pricing page. It's not gated. You don't have to fill out a form. On the opposite side of that coin is somebody like Salesforce, and they're admittedly a bit up market, but there's no publicly available pricing for something like that. And there's indications all across the middle tier of SaaS as well, that if you want to win SMB, you have to display your price. We've always believed in price transparency. Our price has always been publicly available. That extends all the way up to the enterprise. But as a buyer of software as well, it is maddening to not be able to find a price until after you've gone through 2 calls. So I just wanted to retreat what Alex was saying.
Alex, I'm sorry, I don't have the GIF here. It's they basically you got from the gist of this GIF what they are doing, right?
Yes, like exactly why I have this slide here is that kind of what we've just talked now maybe doesn't really necessarily have to do with direct sales, right? But it still doesn't answer the questions, okay, but how do we close these deals, right? But if we talk about SMB, I wanted to make a strong point about the cooperation between sales, marketing, and product. This is something that we've already talked about earlier, right? When Rosie talked about the feedback loop, how we're in constant communication at Reply with the marketing regarding the leads, how they came in, what they wanted, why they did not close. And that's why I wanted to stress this again, that the three roles have to be in complete cooperation. And then I'll touch upon this a bit later regarding the product, how we can actually leverage product in pushing those deals forwards and kind of staying on track of closing deals on time. Yeah, so a few more points regarding the sales cycle, right? So of course, we talked that the tendency has been with the increase of the sales cycle, but for SMBs, for example, kind of what we see, and this would be also the lower end of SMBs, we do see quite short sales cycles. And what this means is that you're not going to have initially so many face-to-face interactions with these prospects. So the one interaction that you have, maybe that one time they go on your website, that one time they come to your sometimes these are only 15-minute calls or half an hour calls, that the interaction has to be flawless for them, and it has to also fit with what they initially expect to happen when they come to look at the software. And it's something that Tom said, you don't want this to be gated, right? You don't want them to come face an issue of not getting the answer to what they need, or maybe seeing something that doesn't align with what they expect of what they've seen elsewhere. So that would exactly turn them away. So we need to focus, because our time pretty much is going to be limited. So it's going to be fast sales cycle, maybe fewer interactions between the sales rep and the client at the end. In terms of people involved in the process, we see that kind of very often it doesn't, in our case, it's not going to be that many people involved. Sometimes the end user would be a decision maker if you're talking about a founder or kind of a 1-2 man sales teams, but of course that will depend. And the one thing that I wanted to tell here is kind of also the flexibility, maybe coming back to the pricing thing once again, is the flexibility that you will offer them in the end will kind of feel them more free in their decision making and more empowered and more trusting at the end. And this means that you might also need to consider or look at the land and expand strategy, where you kind of let them enter earlier, but then you kind of nurture them and kind of opposite to building that trust up front and then getting the check up front. That does work with, I'm sure, like Tom will talk about it. We go up market, that's the way to go. If we're talking about SMB, what we've seen specifically with our audience is kind of readiness to run like a certain validation of the tool, but that doesn't necessarily happen only during the 14-day free trial, but that still expand during the first several months. So we do introduce things like pilots or POC plans, and if it's like a high quality deal for us, we will ensure that during this proof of concept, we have success looped in, we have deliverability team looped in, that during this validation that's extended, or maybe rather shifts from the pre-sales process to kind of after the initial payment has been made, then we are nurturing them to then help them grow further.
Would you say that freemium or like the free plan is a must-have for SMBs or no? Because I know there are different options. What do you say?
Definitely. I'll say that I remember the first time when we got an idea to introduce a freemium plan at Reply, and I was not happy. Mm-hmm. The sales team was like, "What? Now they are gonna do a freemium only." Right. I definitely see a lot of value in either a trial option where it's risk-free, where they have the freedom to test pretty much all of the capabilities of the solution, mm-hmm. or the freemium plan that kind of is based on the core value of your solution, mm-hmm. that delivers initial value. Definitely.
Tom, do you have anything to add on this, freemium or no freemium?
Not particularly insightful. I think it's a super big existential question of whether you're going to be a sales-led organization, a PLG organization, or try to be a hybrid of both mm-hmm. of those things. So I think like prescribing one thing across an entire segment like SMB would probably, in my opinion, be a mistake.
Okay. All right.
Yeah, I think we've definitely given a try to the freemium model. We might step away from it, but we also had our own experience with it for some time. Okay. Next, I wanted to move on to the demo and just mention a few things of what my team does right now when it comes to preparing for demos and kind of what their demos look like in general. So even though, if we're talking about SMBs, then we're probably going to have something like a 30-minute demo call, and the accounts are not going to be that extensive, but we still do the preparation before the call. And on the left, you can see the 3 points that kind of what we do is that we use an AI note taker when we're doing a demo. And then
Mhm.
before the call, they have this like in Zoom pop-up where they can type in their notes. They also have like a structure of the call that they go through, like what they would usually discuss. And then they have this option where before the call, they prepare. So they kind of the discovery on these accounts, it starts before you enter Zoom or Teams or Google Meet where you have the call. Discovery starts when you open their LinkedIn, your company, their company page, and then you kind of build out an understanding of what the account is gonna probably like the point is for you to anticipate which pains they might bring to you. You anticipate the processes that they follow based on what you are able to find on their LinkedIn, on their website, and you build these assumptions, and then you can fill in the gaps as you go. But my point here is that with the SMBs, you're not going to be able to have these lengthy 20-minute or 30-minute discovery calls. Even 15 minutes is too much. You're just going to lose them because that's usually not what they anticipate. They come in with certain expectations to get to know the product, to understand how it helps, and they're usually not really ready to spend a while on the discovery. That's why you really have to kind of adjust your discovery to these particular personas that you're going to be working with. And that's why you started ahead of time and still thoroughly prep for the call. Yes, and then here, what I wanted to say is that your discovery from kind of a preset thing moves into a continuous discovery process, meaning that you come in there already kind of having a certain understanding, and then you also maybe even throw these assumptions at the prospect whilst you're talking to them and validating, is this the right assumption or not, which also kind of helps you build the trust as you're kind of talking to them about their pain and then discussing the options, how you can solve them. But the point that I'm trying to make is that you might actually start demo kind of a bit early, maybe a couple minutes after, I think maybe 5 minutes or so after the call, but it doesn't mean that your discovery phase is over. You're still popping in these questions and kind of trying to dig deep as you're continuously delivering the value, because that will also help you meet their expectations. I'm curious a bit maybe to hear Tom on what you'd have to say about this.
It's interesting I talk about this. I think what's important, your model, Alex, of being, I think, casual and that shift back between discovery and demo is nice, and people really appreciate it. As a sales leader, I like to make sure my team is going through the exact same gates all the time. So I basically ask them I want them to get the right to say, I have 5 minutes of questions for you. I earn the right by asking that question by saying, I did research, I know who you sell to, I know what you sell. There's some things I don't know. So let me ask you just a few minutes of questions up here. Generally, your call to action to get somebody on that call is the demo. So you need to be relatively brief in your discovery, do as much work ahead of time so you can ultimately get to the demo. And then when you demo, what you're going to find when you demo is that you elicit more questions and more discovery during that demo from the things that people say to you. So I don't think, to your point, it doesn't have to be done all at once the way you do discovery.
Yeah, I think that's what I initially kind of really went after my sales team for a while. I was like, hey, why did you do such a short discovery? Like, you needed to do this more. But I also see that a lot of the time the prospects, like, they're not too comfortable talking too much about it. And as I said, it might be also kind of audience specific. So I see when they kind of spread it out, and then because we always know where in the product we're able to deliver certain value, so then we can elicit these questions kind of to get them to say things that then will prompt us to kind of hit the target in terms of delivering value at the time when it will be most relevant. And yeah, next slide.
And I'll do that just quickly. Any specific insights or particular insight that we can share here on the question in the chat on how to handle pricing objection? Anything particular that anyone is doing for that objection?
I have two things in mind. One, like, I'm going to talk about setting an agenda in my slides in a couple minutes here. And I think what that allows you to do is ensure that you can save pricing for the end of a discussion. Like, pricing should get covered in your first call. I have very, very strong feelings there, but I think you need to understand what product you're selling people, what the use case is, what the volumes are before you quote it. So first, if you're concerned about people opening a call by saying, give me price, or I don't want to move forward, ensure that you tell them at the top of the call when you're going to be covering pricing, and eliminate that fear that they have that you won't cover it. Yes. I also have like a contrarian opinion here. You shouldn't be negotiating price. You shouldn't be discounting price at all. If you make your pricing transparent, especially since Alex is focused on SMB, generally speaking, people are going to be aware of your price by the time they take the meeting. right? So you're going to have people, if you offer pricing transparently, you're going to have higher intent folks in front of you that are less likely to have that pricing objection.
Yeah.
Most people, like, the dark funnel exists. They are shopping, they're on G2, they're on your website, they're on some other community looking at your product. Why wait to show them price until they get in front of you? And if you've done that, you probably won't have as many pricing objections that derail your calls up front.
Rosie, how do we handle objection? Do people say that we're too expensive or not?
Great question. It's all over the board. And when that does happen, usually it's because they've had experience with a solution that was less expensive. And my question is always, so why didn't that work? And 9 times out of 10, it's because the quality wasn't what they thought it was going to be. And so when I hear that price injection, I say, yeah, there are different companies who charge more, and that makes sense because they're not putting as much time into the service that they're providing, and they don't have the same echelon perhaps. So there's a reason behind the price point, and I agree with Tom on the negotiation. I mean, we know as a company, you're charging what you need to be charging in order to make sure that client is serviced properly, 100%. And so that's why, the secure pricing, I completely agree with as well.
This company, Ramp, people know this or not, it's a fintech company that they basically can do corporate cards with, and they have cash back. So the point why I'm bringing Ramp is they have integration with multiple SaaS providers, and what they did, they collected this data about which SaaS providers are easier to negotiate with or give the discount. So they basically build a dashboard that you can give the range of what the average license or average subscription or average money that the companies are spending with this company, and you can see the whole range. And sometimes you're like, hold on, so I can pay HubSpot 50% off what I actually am paying, So it's if you never saw that, check it out. If you guys are using Ramp, it's really cool stats. All right, we don't have a lot of time, so I'm giving the stage to Alex. Yes.
Yeah, I'll just then cover the highlights. I won't cover the whole thing. Something that's important, the post demo, is kind of understanding of what exactly then your sales process will look like. Like, for example, in our case, right, whether that we're talking to outbound demo or the inbound demo request with a qualified lead, then we have an understanding. Then we're gonna kind of put them through the next step that we want them to do is to sign up on a trial for them. And the point that I'm trying to make here is because then we also know the key moments in time during the trial period that we can then leverage. If it's a high priority account, we know that, hey, they need to set up their integration, for example, or they need to invite members, or then we can kind of keep track and reach out at the right time, or for example, or when they do that, then we can kind of see the notification and then reach out to them at the right time, or at the end of the trial, we would probably also leverage that as the right point in time when we would reach out back to them to see if they had any questions. So yeah, the main point that I had here. And yeah, regarding something about maybe a little contrary to what I just said about the trial, but what I'm trying to the point that I wanted to make on this slide is about where you would be able to interact with your product in a way that leverage the PLG approach, the advantages of the PLG approach where you're able to bring sales and product together. And this would actually allow you to move from the standardized processes when you follow up with them 2 weeks time or like 1 week time when you initially schedule that, versus a more flexible process where you're following up with them at the right time when they're doing something that is actually important for your sales cycle. And for example, what we do is that we track things like when the user that is already a sales qualified user or an opportunity is visiting our pricing page, or for example, if they're going on the website, or if they're going to certain pages within the product, then we use that as a trigger to notify the salespeople that now is actually the right time to check in with them, rather than wait 3 or 4 more days when they're not doing that anymore. And once again, going back to the shorter sales cycle, some of them, they want to make the decision fast. And if we don't target them now when they're researching something about us, then we might actually lose them all together. Yep. And then kind of one final thing, the product pop-up is something that we leverage as well for these, because we're doing SMB and we're doing both the self-service and the sales flow, and how even among these self-service accounts, we can still get those strategic accounts to kind of come in and talk to us as we leverage product for like certain pop-ups where we still engage them to go out, come on a demo with us. And the final one I think that would be important here that maybe we haven't yet talked about for the do's, something that I wanted to say is to keep an eye out for lurking competitors, and kind of keeping keywords and AI generated notes, for example, for the demo calls that we do, really helps us to then see, okay, what were the things that were mostly discussed on our calls, or like maybe something changed in the market and some competitors that popped up several times before can now we can actually see that and also build proper battle cards how to work with that. And some things that one of the don'ts, kind of the last don't over there, is if something worked well for you before but stopped, just don't hang on to that, because some of the strategies I think that we hang on to for too long because we were comfortable doing things the old way, but if the results are not there, it means that you're really overdue for a change at this point.
The don't rushing prospects into long-term commitment, it's so true. Tom, remind me, what's your contract look like? You guys rushing prospects into a 1-year contract engagements or not? Or you guys are more flexible with?
We have two simple options. If you buy Chili Piper, you either have a monthly option where you pay a 50% premium for the luxury of that agility, or you buy an annual contract. So a lot of people will start with a monthly on a simple 3-month commitment and then convert to annual. Some people convert to annual 3 weeks in once they see the tool is working.
Oh, wow. And you added the 50% premium on top if you wanted the flexible option, yes?
That's exactly right.
Huh. Interesting.
I'll add to that. So the point is to make it a no-brainer that, for example, your annual has so much more value. Kind of something that we recently did is because what we see the risk of why SMBs did not want to commit to annual is that they're not sure if their outreach strategies are going to pan out. Like, are they going to be effective enough for us to justify paying for the year? So we've included something like dedicated customer success manager that we show, yes, we understand that this is a risk, but we're also here to support you, and you're going to have kind of a dedicated person assigned to your team who is going to support you throughout this journey. And that has also increased our annual conversions compared to a couple months before.
Wow. Alex, thank you so much. So guys, if you have questions to Alex, please put them in the chat. We'll be able to answer them and discuss them in the Q&A section. Jumping right into Tom, and we still have time, so we'll just take some of the Q&A time because we answered a few questions. But yeah, Tom, stage is yours.
I promise to be very fast and punchy, so we have time for Q&A. Folks, thanks for having me. My name is Tom Rohn, SVP of Sales at Chili Piper. I've been at Chili Piper for 2.5 years. So there I govern, we have an SDR motion, an AE motion, and an account management motion. So about 50 folks that roll up through my team. Prior to that, I was at another Series B startup prior to that, and I started my sales career at Groupon back in 2010, 2011. So I've kind of seen the gamut of public companies, private companies, various stages of funding. I wanted to spend a very tactical, I could probably do this in 10 to 15 minutes, a very tactical session just on 3 mistakes that I commonly see sales organizations make, specifically when selling to mid-market and enterprise. But I don't want to step on Alex's toes too much. Some of these things can be used on SMB as well. So the 3 things that I'm going to talk about: setting the right expectations with an agenda at the top of a call, and how that, both for salespeople and sales leaders, can be like the absolute key to replicable, efficient, and nice sales calls. Focusing on outcomes early in the process and details late, and then playing conductor once you get to the yes. Regarding conductor, I meant like music conductors, not train conductors.
Right.
You can cosplay however you see fit. I'm not here to judge. You can do whatever you'd like there. So agendas, these are a sticking point for me. Every sales organization I've ever walked into, one of the first trainings I've done has been talking about setting an agenda. And the reason I do it is I lean into the sales psychology here. People that are getting called by salespeople or getting on calls with salespeople naturally have 3 fears. They're afraid the salesperson is going to waste their time. They're afraid the salesperson is going to swindle them into wasting money, or they're afraid they're going to have to be a jerk to get that person off the phone. And to illustrate this, I think of my mom. My mom is a delightful woman. She's also super smart, super savvy. You know what my mom never does? Picks up calls from an unknown number.
Yeah.
And the reason why is because of these fears, right? She's afraid that someone's just going to waste their time. She's afraid, bless her heart, that she's going to have to be mean to somebody, or worse, she's afraid that she's going to get swindled out of money. These three fears, I think, permeate the entirety of the sales process. And when people get on a call, that's when their fear is the highest. Prospects don't buy when they're in a position of fear. So by setting an agenda, and I'll talk about what that agenda looks like, I can address these three fears to open the doors to a good sales conversation for the rest of the call. And regardless of what you're selling and who you're selling to and at what stage of the process you're in, when you get on a call, you are, I'm going to politely say, a fool to not be setting an agenda at the top of that call. So what does an effective agenda look like? First, what are we going to cover and why? I talked about it before, but my agenda is usually some version of, hey, we have 45 minutes on the calendar today, just to give you the lay of the land or how this is going to run. I've done my research on you. I understand what you sell and who to sell to, but I probably have 5 to 10 minutes worth of questions that I couldn't uncover before this call. So I want to make sure that when I demo our product, which we'll do for the second 15 minutes, I know what products to sell you, what features might be relevant. We'll have 15 minutes left at the end. So it's possible that we're going to determine in that first 30 minutes that there's no reason to use that 15 minutes, or we're going to get to pricing. And you're going to be able to leave this call knowing what our product does, how much it could potentially cost you, and we'll discuss next steps to see what other stakeholders need to get brought in. In that process, if you think about the three fears, I already talked about wasting their time. I'm allotted 45 minutes. I'm not going to use any more of that. You also know that I'm going to do this 10 minutes of discovery up front to then get you to the thing you actually want, which is demo and pricing. I think I've told you that there's an out. If this isn't a fit, I'm not going to make you buy, so you don't have this fear that I'm going to waste your money. And I think that also addresses the third thing, which is you're not going to have to be a jerk to me. If we realize there's not a fit here, we're going to move on and we're going to be cool. A lot of people 5 years ago said, at the end of this call, if it's not a fit, we move forward as friends. That part is implied. You don't have to get to that. People have heard that enough that you don't have to do it.
I feel like I'm in a demo call. I like it. I have this tingling feeling, that I want to buy something.
I'm trying to be punchy. I'm trying to go quick here.
I love that.
So what's in it for a salesperson? Because salespeople, if you tell them like, hey, you want to make sure you're setting an agenda at the top of the call, they perceive it as like bureaucracy, something that their manager asked them to do. First couple things. One, it puts your prospects at ease. They know they have a roadmap now for how the call is going to run. They know they're going to get out of the call what they want to get out of the call, demo and pricing, right? It also lowers their defensive guard. They're more open to listening now that all those fears have subsided. It also naturally, to the question that we had before, it pushes pricing discussions to the end of a call. Every salesperson has dozens of examples per year of the beginning of their calls being railroaded by, I just want to know price. Some products you can't quote price until you learn quantities and use cases and everything else. By pushing that to the end, you have people invested now in the first 30 minutes of the call, knowing you're going to get to that. Last thing, keep the prospect in your system. Think about, especially new salespeople, how often you watch a call and 8 minutes into the call, they're already handling objections about the way the product works and they haven't had a chance to demo the product yet. Keep people in your system in a way that is consultative and natural by setting those expectations up front. I'm a sales leader, so what's in it for me to get my team to use agendas? One, standardize the process. All of us have a 5, 7, 10-step process that we want people to go through. We have these permission gates to move along. And all sales leaders have this dream of being able to pick up any call and say, I know exactly where Rosie is going next because we have installed this process so well. There's a difference between scripts and permission gates. If you want to standardize your permission gates, make people set an agenda because they're defining up front where we're going to go with this call. And then when you're trying to do new trainings, you can tell people, like give them the orientation of this is where you're going to cover that in the call because you've already set the agenda to standardize it. They follow that because their prospects are now at ease and willing to follow it. Yeah. You can coach so much more effectively. So if you want to increase adoption of your trainings, start with the baseline of those agendas. And then nothing gets skipped. You can cover pricing when pricing is relevant.
I love it. And especially also that sometimes when you teach and train this and you have that in the process, that sometimes you don't think about the next steps, you just know it, right? So you spend less energy and you're more efficient and more happy about the work because you don't need to think about, what's next, right? So that the importance of the process is just huge.
Cool. So the second mistake I see people make far too often, and this is true even for my team occasionally, salespeople, specifically the tenured ones, they feel so confident that they know about their product that they show people how the product works, and they feel really good leaving a demo because they're like, I showed them the ins and out, I showed them every feature, I absolutely nailed it. But that's a bad habit of playing show and tell. That is not what people are looking for in a demo. People first want to know what your product accomplishes. So perhaps one of like the most famous sales quotes, or maybe it's a marketing quote, you can decide, is people don't want to buy a 1/4-inch drill. They want to buy a 1/4-inch hole. So like this drill, I might sell you a cordless drill. I might sell you one that has a cord. I might sell you one that is 1,000,000 horsepower. I can't even use a hammer, let alone a drill. So I'm not going to describe drills very well, but they want to know why those features help them accomplish their goals better. That is the perspective that you have to put within your sales calls. Also, it's worth noting, buying and implementing software is an absolute ton of work. So up front, you have to over-index on what the product accomplishes so that people can see the payoff up front, to then get in the weeds of the product details, the integrations, the install, the different features and configurations they have. Without knowing what the product accomplishes, those features become objections. Those things that do amazing things for your prospects and customers start to feel like more work to people if they don't understand the outcomes of those tools or of your features first. So what does this look like? What does this sound like? What is the difference between like describing the outcome of your product and describing your product? The outcome of your product is what we do. When I was taught to demo early on in my sales career, I was told you have to show people what we do and then show them how we do it. What we do is which metric improves, what problem goes away, what process is replaced. I didn't intend to do this, but we talked about Chili Piper before. We're best known for our form concierge product, which is JavaScript that sits behind your form so that as soon as somebody hits submit, rather than getting a thank you page where we say an SDR will reach out later and you lose 50% of those people, our concierge product allows you to qualify, route, and schedule people immediately from that form. Qualifying, routing, and scheduling is how we do it. But what we accomplish is we make sure that when 100 qualified people fill out your form, 100 people go and book because we show a calendar for the relevant person right away. So what we do is eliminate the melt between the people who fill out your form and the people you end up meeting with. How we do it is that we qualify, route, and schedule. Let me show you all the features for when somebody no-shows and how we can send a reschedule link. Let me show you the integrations we have with your sales engagement platform. All of those things about how we do it before talking about what we accomplish are useless, and they're going to come across more often as objections than they are as benefits. Cool.
The conductor one.
Last thing, again, I'm referring to like an orchestra conductor here. One of the last mistakes that I see people commonly make, especially when you're talking, again, we were talking about mid-market and enterprise and specifically outbound deals in this category. Reps will get really proud of themselves because after their demo, they've started an email thread with 8 people on that person's buying committee, and they're now 45 emails deep with those 8 people. And I think that's good. They think they're multi-threading. They don't realize that that thread is like effectively yarn. You could rip it in half. Because when you have 8 people in a buying process without defined actions and everything else, super fragile, very likely to break. So your job as a seller is to make the process simple, even if it isn't easy. Selling to enterprise isn't easy. Procuring tools, like I talked about, is not easy. But once you get a yes, build a mutual action plan, either formally or informally, so that you can clearly divide responsibilities, assign deadlines, and then move forth from there. This is a screenshot of a mutual action plan on the right. It doesn't have to be this. It can be an email with a bulleted list of action items and owners. It can be a Google sheet that you screenshot or share. It can be a deal room that you use if you want to buy software for deal rooms. But you need to be able to say, okay, if we were to buy this, who's going to do InfoSec? Who's going to sign the contract? Who's going to actually make the payment? Who's going to handle the implementation? Assign those things up front. And then we'll move to the next slide, which is how you do this effectively. Rather than once you're down funneled, you've gotten a yes and you're trying to get people to buy. The mistake that most people make is that they have that 40 email long thread with 8 different people. And they're trying to follow up on that thread saying, hey, we're still waiting for this configuration. Hey, we're still waiting for you to sign on the InfoSec review. And they email everybody on that thread. And if you're Rosie and you're one of 8 people on that thread, you're seeing these 4 emails come through checking on one thing. And you're feeling like momentum has stalled in procuring the tool that you really, really want to buy. You also, because it's 8 different people, you don't take ownership of that individual item, right? You also feel like you can like wait for the action item that you're supposed to be finishing because things get done sequentially by nature and you do it in the group. The right way to do it is to isolate. And the example that I just gave of InfoSec is probably the best one. You have to isolate the CTO, the head of IT, whoever is doing InfoSec. You go get that action done with that person individually, and you might have to schedule 1 or 2 meetings with that one person. But again, I keep picking on Rosie. If Rosie is the sales counterpart, she is only going to see that that work was done when I announce to the group, great news, everybody, InfoSec is complete. Rosie, we just need to complete with you this item. Rosie now feels accountable to her buying committee rather than accountable to a salesperson that she doesn't give a crap about, right? Rosie doesn't want to hold up the group. And I can go meet with the head of IT to say, we have to get this done because you are accountable to this next step in the process. You have to isolate the most complex portions of your sales process. Do not do it by committee. You might have one champion who you're going to include with the head of IT, but you're not going to include the entire group. If you do, you will absolutely get bogged down and you're going to see deals fall. Really early, this will be the last thing I talk about before we get to Q&A. We were talking about sales cycles expanding earlier. And if you're ever wondering, like, is this happening to me? It's very easy to run a report of your open opportunities and the average age of those opportunities. And if the average age is longer than your normal sales cycle, you're experiencing a lengthening of your sales cycle. 99 times out of 100, when sales cycles lengthen, win rates go down. Time kills deals. We've all heard that since our first in sales. And your way to move those things forward, get people committed to deadlines, chase those deadlines individually to gain momentum as a buying collective, which is who you sell to in mid-market and enterprise.
That is so true. Like, speed right now is everything. Like, even, the biggest challenge that we are facing right now is the fact that sometimes when you want to book a meeting with a Belkins rep, you need to spend a few days, wait for a few days or a week or something to get the calendar freed up. And we've seen so many lost opportunities because of the fact that buyers are already talking to someone else, right? So whatever, how you can do, if you can decrease the time between any action in any stage of the buying process, then it's stack up in a win-win-win-win. So that's so true, Tom. Thank you so much. That was so great. We're going to the questions. Guys, we have 15 minutes basically to answer your question. So if any question to Tom, Alex, or Rosie, or myself, put them in the chat. I will start from the top. And I'm going to put the questions here in the chat. What actions can small team implement besides routing? So probably for pre-sales or for generally to help to get that frictionless. Tom, like, besides routing, you guys, what would you recommend?
Anything that you're hiding behind the lock and key of your sales process, if you're selling into SMB, you need to bring in front of that door. We already talked about pricing. I don't need to relitigate that. But if you're selling to SMB, you should likely have a tool that is demoable via like a video on your site somewhere to get people to get to it. And what you're going to be doing is empowering your team that by the time you route a lead to your salespeople, the people they're selling to are already relatively educated on the product that they're looking to sell. So you can shorten sales cycles by bringing those things up front. Yeah. You might think like, no, I'm generating curiosity and interest from people. They'll certainly fill out my form because they haven't found this stuff. No, they're abandoning your website without filling out that form because they're frustrated by that experience instead. So that's my first overarching key. The rest of the keys are the ones I just went through in terms of like how you manage your sales process and how you teach specifically like in SMB. If you're a small team selling to small teams, you got to make sure that you govern that process really, really tightly and that you make it easy for people to buy and understand what that sales process will look like.
Then this next one is interesting. What if a company is targeting the markets, SMB, mid-market, enterprise? There are some challenges in transparent pricing, and you've spoken about the transparency pricing a lot. If you're addressing all of these markets, would you also, again, the concern that I have, obviously, one of the reasons when you go enterprise or you go up market is that basically you're creating a product with a lot of extra value that you can increase your margins on, right? That your pricing is not as straightforward as it was. So now with that pricing, like, you need to have someone to explain to a client why the pricing is as it is. So if you put that transparent on the website that, let's say, your product starts at 10 grand a month for the enterprise, then they won't engage. So the question for the group here is how transparent we should be with the pricing, specifically if we're addressing the needs of different segments, both the mid-market, enterprise, and SMBs. Alex, you have any thoughts on this?
I just had some thoughts regarding that. You can always build your kind of pricing model in a tiered structure that that, I don't know, some of the cheaper plans or like simpler plans, those ones would be for the SMB. For the mid-market, you might also show the price, but for the enterprise, you might want to make it clear that you have that price and it is there. Maybe also list certain things that would be included, but then maybe not show it directly, because as you said, Michael, it will probably turn them away. So I just think kind of build it around so that it's straightforward, that you do cover all of them.
Yeah. Tom, you have anything to add?
Yeah, I have just enough arrogance to think that we've inspired some of our competition to lean into price transparency a bit more. People who usually didn't list their pricing have now come around to it because our pricing is publicly available. And I would consider like perfectly transparent pricing, including a pricing calculator on your site, is the gold standard. But there are tons of examples to this question of people listing a starting price for SMB, a starting price for mid-market, and then prompting people in enterprise to contact you for a quote. And that's going to help you serve the majority of your deals, which are SMB and mid-market, and accomplish what I talked about in the last answer, which is like give them the information they need to go quickly. But enterprises increasingly are familiar with, one, negotiating super aggressively. In fact, they employ people to do that. But they're also familiar with buying software that doesn't have transparent price. So if you want to get a B+ in this area, do that. Show a starting price on SMB and mid-market and ask people to contact you for enterprise.
All right, next question.
I have one thing actually I wanted to add there. I love everything that you're saying, Tom, and you too, Alex. The difference here with a service is I agree with a baseline pricing, having that available. But the difference is when you get into the service, is really understanding where the gap is that you're trying to help the prospect. And that's where you're going to come up with a customized process at the end of here is your prescription. So when we're talking a service, I like to talk about prescribing the best solution because of where they are and the gap that they're looking to close. And so that's why I think pricing can be different when we're talking service, and it can go up or it can be down.
Yeah. I think that what Salesforce is doing, is like when this exactly how they're explaining it. It's like they don't have a pricing, there's trans pricing because they wanted to prescribe to you exactly what you need. So, looking at the pricing generally, it doesn't make sense for. I think that's probably, I don't know, it's just.
Yeah,
it's super common in professional services, but you can at least quote people like, hey, a minimum engagement for us starts at $2,000. And make sure that people understand this isn't, people get on these calls and they don't understand if software is going to be $150,000 or $15,000.
Yeah, that's true.
Get them in the right universe, at least.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. All right. Then this question here about the sales marketing alignment. What is the crucial conversation that marketing and sales team should have be bi-weekly other than reports? Just how do you bring sales and marketing together? I think we're going to we have one more quick question after this, but that's the final one. Yeah. So how do we what kind of communication, how do we bring them together? So I think all of us can answer this. So maybe Tom, starting with you, how do you guys bring everyone, sales and marketing together? What kind of communication, how often, what channels, besides shouting out when there's a close there?
Yeah, I'm big fans of our marketing department. I think they're fans of me as well. So it's typically not particularly contentious. I think you should talk about win rate. Like a topic that doesn't get talked about between marketing and sales teams enough is win rate. And win rate, I think, is like a good indicator, canary in the coal mine for so many other things. Your win rate declining can be a reflection of the fact that your market positioning has been weakened. It can be an indication that the quality of the leads that are coming in have been weakened. And if you're not tracking that on at least a monthly basis, I don't think it has to be bi-weekly, but monthly, saying like, gosh, we were running 34% of our deals. Now we're at 32. Mm-hmm. What do we think? Let's go look at our lost reasons for new logos. Is it that more people were disqualified? Is it that we've lost more deals to competition? Because any of those symptoms are likely a shared responsibility between marketing and sales. You're going to at least need collateral to address those problems. You might need better positioning. You might need better leads, but it's certainly any conference you go to will tell you it's like one team, one dream between marketing and sales, like get alignment. Talk about the thing that's a really good indicator of just like the strength of the leads you're getting and the strength of the product you're selling. And in general, like you will benefit as a sales leader from having an open mindset. Like let people peek behind the curtain of your operation. I think there's a lot of virtue in like being open to marketers who also buy a ton of software, like poking into your sales process, asking questions, and that gives you the right to do the same to marketing, to make suggestions to them about how they could improve as well.
Alex, what you guys are looking at from the conversion sales and marketing? What's the most important for you?
Like I firstly wanted to mention that, like in terms of the how often we would have the conversations, for us, we tried doing it every week, but it seemed kind of a bit of an overkill. So for us, it works to do it once every 2 weeks, because then we actually can kind of always keep an eye on, because for example, for us, one of the channels that we constantly need to tweak back and forth, and then as Tom said, see, did the leads come, like why for example we lost them, did they come with the wrong kind of expectations, or was the intent not there, or kind of what happened with that channel, for example, that if we look at it on a month-to-month basis, we're not able to properly address it. So we try to look at it something like bi-weekly, because then we know that, okay, we analyze the results. When we make the tweaks into, for example, our ads campaigns, it's still going to take another 2 weeks or something for it to start showing the results. That's why we kind of stay on top of it.
Rosie, what critical or what conversion metric that you are talking with marketing about when you guys are meeting?
And so not just the close of industry, how many are we getting, what's our close on this industry? Yeah. But further than that, it's delivery. Because what are we going to be able to retain as far as a long and healthy relationship? That's what we're looking at when we're going into a relationship with a client. So we're talking to delivery, and we're bringing those in as well. Those metrics is how long is this client staying with us? Okay, hey, marketing, here's where we want to focus, because the entire ecosystem is going to be happier when everyone is getting a lead that is going to be successful.
Tom, Alex, are you ranking or qualifying clients based on sort of like the success of the engagement with your product? So for example, obviously Chili Piper can be used more effectively for certain industries or for certain companies, either X traffic that you need to have or X number of inbound leads that you can need to convert to see the value, and so on and so forth. Do you have any tiering of like, okay, tier 1, tier 2, tier 3 clients based on how successful they can be with your software? You guys track something like that or not?
We do, yeah. So we look at sales team size. We actually bought a data solution that would crawl not just like LinkedIn employee count, but the amount of salespeople they have, which is the most important metric for us. We use website traffic, we use industry, and we use geography. And again, the like what I called an algorithm before, which I think again is technically an algorithm. The algorithm that scores takes all those things into account before outputting a score. We then don't tier, but effectively you take like 400 accounts times our SDR headcount, and the top portion of our accounts will get distributed to SDRs there.
Alex, what about you? What about you guys? You do something?
Yeah, we definitely look at the industries, because some of the industries, as you said, they by default can be a loser for us if we kind of, we said that earlier today, if we kind of spend time on them. But then we look at the company size, and then we kind of know that what's the minimum company size has to be for the account to show potential for us.
So for us, the alignment, what Rosie mentioned was, again, to give context, is we do the tiering. The tiering are very important for us, because if at certain months the marketing team going to bring the tier 3 clients, then the sales and the delivery team later will fail, because we won't be able to then retain these accounts, right? And won't be able to be successful with them. So where the alignment's happening is when we are analyzing the deals that the marketing team is bringing to the sales team with regards to that tiering process, and that conversion is like a North Star for everyone. Because if the marketing team brings more tier 1 clients for us, there is a much higher chance of closing, much higher chance of success working with those accounts, and obviously that's going to show us the success of that marketing campaign or channel or so on and so forth. So that's where, for alignment for us is, and the common strategy.
Yeah, and some of those, thank you for diving deeper into that. And some of those things that we're looking at is how the prospects industry, how competitive is their industry right now? What are we seeing? What is their average ticket size? Are we going to be able to, we want to make sure that client is going to be successful. So those are all of the things that we use to determine tier.
And then I need to answer one last question, or you guys need, from Bruno. This is the last question, and we're ramping up. What does segmenting outbound AEs hours make sense? All right, so
I'm going to make the assumption that these are outbound AEs that are receiving meetings from an SDR team rather than outbound AEs that are outbounding themselves. If they're outbound AEs that are receiving meetings, I think you need 4 hours of coverage for whatever geography you're selling into. So by that, I mean, if you have a rep that is on Eastern Standard Time in the US, but they need to cover Europe, if they get 4 hours of coverage for a standard working day in that geography, I think you're going to be okay if you're booking meetings for them. If they are outbounding in that geography, I think you probably need an additional hour or two to get more, like, just frankly to be efficient with their time to make cold calls and everything else. But if you use a tool, it could be Chili Piper or anybody, to actually display a calendar and let people book, I think if you have 4 hours of time, you can consider yourself amply covered. Yeah. I happen to have a team in the US and a couple of AEs in Europe as well, and there is no correlation between, if I give one of my reps in Europe the US based lead, there is no like difference in win rate depending on the geography they're selling to, as long as they can find time to meet in a given day.
All right, perfectly. We are according to the schedule. Love it. Thank you so much, Tom, Rosie, Alex, for contributing. So much learning, so great. So for those who wants to receive the deck, please register at this QR code, scan the QR code. You're going to get the link to your mailbox with the full recording and the full deck with everything that Alex, Rosie, and Tom shared to you today. And then if you scan this code, I would appreciate the feedback about this event, how we can be better, how we can improve it, what guests we're going to have, what we're missing, what the format, do we need to change the host or not? So all of that you can share in that feedback form. All right, guys, I appreciate you all. Thank you so much for preparing this, and have a great rest of your day. And thank you everyone for joining us today. Thank you, everyone. It's been great.
Thank you, guys.
Yeah.
Bye. Thank you.
Bye.